to talking about as we head into the holiday break for the Kraken. As Sylvia said, I'm not shoveling dirt onto this season yet. I'm not putting them in the grave quite yet, which is odd, but we get to where this team is at the break. The team came into this game. These are money puck numbers, by the way. So if you question numbers, yell at them, not me. I may have glasses, but I'm not that much of a nerd. Um, the Kraken came into this game with 4.5% odds to make the Stanley Cup playoffs. After this loss to the Avalanche, they have 3.57% chance. So they went down a tick, but they're already really low in the first place. Um, you go into this, yeah, with those odds really low. And I will let you guys go first. We'll do the reverse. We'll go Jade, Sylvia, and then I will go into my rant about this franchise. Um, you go in, where are you right now? You're six in the Pacific. You're 7 points behind the next closest team, which is fifth place in Calgary. Which I mean, you'd expect some of those teams in the Pacific to falter at some point. Maybe Calgary won't keep it up. Vancouver's been dealing with injuries. Do they keep going forward? Does a Los Angeles team that didn't really do too much in the offseason and still has goaltender questions pick up? No, none of those teams are faltering. Um, and oh, I hit conference instead of wild card. I apologize. I'm 23, but I act like I'm really old sometimes. And yeah, you're 11 points out of the last wild card spot in the West. So it's grim, but we're not at that point yet where you start selling. I know there are some folks who want drastic changes. Um, I'll get into it more after I let you guys go, but personally, I don't know what you can do. You made a trade to take a flyer on a guy to boost the offense. He's not doing anything because you don't play the way that he does. You made a trade to get, a guy who has high upside and hasn't reached it yet and could use a change of scenery. And it's only been a few games. I don't expect that change to happen like that. I just don't know what drastic moves you do to help you this season. If you're talking about long term, then sure, if we want to start the teardown, sure. But I just think it doesn't happen in December, right? So just talking about where the Kraken sit situationally right now, the 22nd of December. What are your thoughts, Jade, on this team? Because obviously this past week kind of emphasizes that, with the lack of consistency, all that. We're from where we were on that weird start time of like 1:30 on October 8th against St. Louis to where we are now. What are your thoughts on this team and just sort of your characteristics, your takeaways about the Kraken? And then we'll have Sylvia go after you.
Um, I would say that it seems like I feel like the season started a little bit on like a better note than where we are right now, which I know that happens after you're losing games and especially when you're on a 5 game lose streak. But it seems like I don't even it from an outside perspective, it almost feels like something changed, but I can't quite pinpoint what I think truly changed. There's definitely it seems like a lack of confidence is like the best way that I think I could put it into words within the team itself. And yeah, I don't know what kind of change, people are expecting at this point because there's not a whole like there's obviously players that we could trade, but there's not like a whole lot off the top of my head that can be done to really switch up how things are. Like you said, we just made this trade. They just made this trade the other day to get another forward, and he hasn't even had time to practice with the team yet. So that's definitely playing a part in what's going on currently, I think, at least the past couple games that he's been in. Aside from that, they added these bigger names before the season started, and we're definitely seeing them seeing their playing style kind of creep into the way that the Kraken are playing, I think. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know where they go from here aside from I think it's too early to like completely tear down and rebuild. The team is only 4 years old. They've made playoffs one time. I don't personally think that this is a point where that should be like everybody's first go-to solution, if that makes sense. Maybe a little bit of retooling here and there, but I don't think that rebuilding, like just tearing it down, starting over is necessary.
Yeah, I think similarly to that, um, I mean, you said it, there isn't anything to do. But I think a big part of that is because the league as a whole, like to expand it out a little bit, the league as a whole is not having a very good season,
Hmm.
right? Like there are no standout teams. Yeah, the Wild are doing really good. Nobody expected them to do, as good as they are. The Jets obviously are killing it. The Capitals are killing it. But like there's no it team. There's no like it feels like there's nothing to aspire to other than, just beat just win a game, which like
Yep.
that's how sports work. Yes, I get it. But like the narratives are missing. We're like there's arguments everywhere. There's like weird like amulets going on. Something's weird with the season, and I don't like it. And we got to get to the bottom of it. And I think with the Kraken, I'm going to fully blame the fact that the first home game was at 1:30 for why we're doing so weird. Um, I think the schedule is weird. I think players are tired, but across the league, not just the Kraken. We're seeing players like 5 games in a row or like 5 days in a row, and you're playing back-to-back games this week and not that week, and then this day that there's 0 games, but the next day there's like 16 games. It's weird. The entire season is weird. And it's not odd that the Kraken are also feeling it, that the Kraken fans are also feeling that the season is weird. That being said, though, team is young. Team is 4 years old. Just because your 4 year old toddler can't read like a chapter book, you're not just going to throw them out on the street. You got to have that time and really that patience to develop it. And I wonder if a lot of the fan disillusionment with this team isn't because we have all of these really bad teams in Seattle already. Like, well, not bad teams, but just like not offensively powerful teams in Seattle. So they're not seeing these like huge blowout wins across the sports, world in Seattle. And I want like I feel it definitely feels like this like doomerism falls on Kraken fans and sports fans in general, really, really Kraken fans, because they're expecting, we're paying this goalie this amount of money, we're paying Chandler Stephenson this amount of money. You just traded our Will Borgen, and now everyone's upset, and they're not really like fully locking into the fact that this team is building. We literally just had a coaching change again, not to bring it back to Dan Miles, but every time, but like we just had this coaching change. This team has to have that time, even if it's a year, to settle in, to really understand who they're playing with. And maybe if by the end of, the summer, by the end of the season, during like the actual big off-season trades, if something needs to happen, it's most likely going to happen there. We're not going to see anything change right now, other than maybe, hopefully, these players buy in and find that want and that hunger to win.
Excuse me. I think you bring up some good points and they help me in my rant here. So we're gonna go on a trip, ladies and gentlemen. I think Sylvia brings up some great points. Um, the franchises that have been super, and I say super, and by super I mean multiple championships. The franchises that have been super successful in the city are franchises that are paid less attention to. The Storm have won 4 league titles. They're a women's basketball team. Misogyny or not, they get paid less attention to, and they often don't get marketed as well. Some teams, oh, there's a basketball team here already. Yes, and I will continue to use our platform for that. That's part of the reason that CSS exists. The Sounders have been highly successful, 2 league titles. They won a title for the region of North America. They've been in the playoffs every year but one year in their time in the MLS. Um, they don't get mentioned. These crappy, terrible, horrible Seattle sports accounts that are just fan pages that go for engagement say Seattle sports, and it's the Seahawks, the Mariners, and the Kraken. That's horseshit, and I'm gonna use it now. I've said it. We've got it out of the way. We're not even halfway through. I don't care. those are two of the most successful franchises in this city, and they don't get paid attention to. You look at the Seahawks; they had their one great run. They won the Super Bowl, yes, and then they fell short the next year, but then they didn't really do anything after that. And the last time they did anything before that, they fell short in the very controversial Super Bowl shirt. But before that, too, 40 years of mediocrity, really. Um, the Mariners, don't get me started. We can go down that route. It's very highly documented how difficult that route has been. Let's see. I mean, the Rain have won league titles, which, they've got the President's Trophy in the NHL. The Rain have like three of those. But if you don't win the title, just like the President's Trophy, it does not matter, does it? Right. So, we're going down the list. We're going down the list. The Seawolves have won two league titles, have been in the championship, I think, 5 years. But Americans don't really know rugby. Don't really know it that well either. I mean, we've been there for 3 years now, and we've been covering it. I'm not an expert though, I grew up playing baseball and soccer around here. So I think Sylvia makes a great point in that, you know, there's a lot of doomerism, because when the Legion of Boom was good with the Seahawks, they were good. And this city, it was all great. You had the Seahawks jerseys everywhere, sure. But, people understand that. Americans can generally get football. A lot of them don't know it too well, but they can understand it well enough. With hockey, it's an interesting thing. And here's where I'll go. I'll change tunes a little bit and stop yapping about the Seattle teams. With this expansion team, Sylvia brings up great points again, with this being year 4 of this franchise. Because of as much as people say they, know to not compare to Vegas, because of proximity, they're in your same division, or, them being the team before you, you will always be compared. Always. And even if you tell yourself, like, I'm sure it still creeps up in your mind there. If you think about other expansion teams, rarely do they do that well. It takes years for teams to make the playoffs when they're an expansion team. They're like, so it's like a toddler. You're raising a child here. You have to get some infrastructure, you have to grow. And to an extent, I think year 2 kind of fucked up everybody's mind about this team because you over exceeded. You had guy again, Daniel Sprong had career Daniel Sprong. Okay. It's great that he's here. He's funny, sure, sometimes. But like we're getting comments about why he's not playing. He doesn't back check. I mean, he's not gonna work on this Dan Bilesma team. If I don't think he would work really under Hack. It's part of the reason they didn't want to bring him back. You can save money, but I don't know. Uh, Jared McCann, he's got a great shot. I can understand that. There are just some other guys too. It just doesn't, the expectations, I think, were muddied there because when this franchise started, I think the terminology that Ron Francis used was like a 5-year window. That would have been next year, right? But instead, you make it year 2. The talk of expansion in the NBA, and people will say that might not count, but it's money, right? An NBA team comes in here, they have to use CPA. If the OVG group, who is more than likely going to put in a bid, who own the Kraken, who are doing the renovation for the Memorial Stadium, sorry, which is right next to Climate Pledge Arena, they're going to put a bid in, that would split their resources. That's one group owning two teams, right? So that splits their resources. That's money. So you want to do successful so team people in the city are invested in your product, right? Because if the NBA comes in here, it runs the same time as NHL. It's very much like Woody and Toy Story. I don't want to play with you anymore. And then you're done. Not done. I mean, you'd be fine, but you're losing fans. Jade and I can tell you, we look at the crowd. I mean, even watching on TV, you can probably tell. You look at the crowd; they're not as packed as they have been.
Mm-hmm.
The allure is wearing off.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed to spend money. Ron Francis didn't give out those mega massive contracts like he did, obviously, with Stevenson and Montour before. You could throw Matty in there, and then Grubauer in the beginning. He didn't give out those contracts normally as a general manager. I put a little more onus on the ones lately to pressure, pressure to win now. Because again, I think if he had time to build it properly, I'm sure it could be great. I mean, you look at the pipeline with the Beniers and, maybe if he developed a little bit better. with a Shane Wright. You've got Berkeley Catton in the wings now. And you've got a very talented prospect pool. You know, Carson Rakoff is mentioned in your top 25 prospects, all this stuff. If they had time to build it properly, I'm sure maybe next year, yeah, we could be this is a sustainable team. But you've got this expansion group, you've got pressure to win from the outside, um, and you're tied up in a lot of contracts, right? I mean, uh, I looked at it and we can look at it here, but to Jade's point, I don't, what do you do? I think Sylvia might have mentioned as well, so I don't mean to single you out, but I mean, what do you do? Let's try switch things up. You've got Johnny Gord, Brandon Tanev, Daniel Sprong, and Josh Mahura all as UFAs after the season ends, right? Those are guys who, with all respect to them, and they bring their own things, largely play fourth line minutes for this team. And obviously, Mahura is playing third pairing. I don't I hope that's not what's going to move the needle for you. If and then RFAs like Kako, Cartier, and Evans, those two guys coming off of ELCs, like I imagine those three will be back. Um, and then like if you want to look to guys who will have 1 year left after this season, Schwartz, Bjorkstrand, Tolvin, and Alexia. This could look like a different team, very well much later on down the road. But I think it's my frustration lies within, we shouldn't have even been panicking about playoffs, at this point. It's year four of this franchise. It's great. Yes. Obviously, you'd like to win, but if you build it properly, you can make it a sustained product. You know what I mean? But I think some of it's the doomerism, like you pointed out. I'm sure the other teams, people like to look at this team because it's fresh and it's new and it's providing them something that they're not used to in seeking. Like the Mariners, people are used to them losing. The Seahawks, outside of their great run, and since their great run, have largely been mediocre. They made the playoffs a few times, but they don't do anything. They don't go deep, right? The Sounders, I mean, they've been going there and they've been winning, but they don't get as much attention. The Storm, same thing, right? It's just hard to see this much like anger and I don't know if I can be a fan. These motherfuckers were just born. I mean, that's where most of my frustration lies, right? And I think, I don't think they make the playoffs, truthfully. I mean, it's just if you had any shred of consistency, if you had gotten I wanted more of a goal scoring forward. I get what Stevenson brings, sure, fine, but I think that was just pressure. We need to make a splash, and sure, I mean he'd be solid on a lesser deal. I mean, I wouldn't mind if that you added Stevenson, Montour, and then a goal scoring forward. I don't know which of that crop it would be. I wanted Jonathan Marchessault. So I mean, things aren't going super well in Nashville, but I mean, you know, it's just I think it's the view of this franchise is skewed, and that sucks because if they were able to grow properly, it would be really exciting to see, you suck in year two, you get a higher draft pick. We could go and look at those draft picks and see, who they could have added, and potentially been another pillar of this franchise. Um, you know, I don't know. It's all very frustrating, and that's what my issue is here. Is don't get me wrong, I obviously love covering this team. It's a lot of fun. We've got a great group of media folks. It's been able to help me meet you guys, right? We've got a great group of followers that like only pay attention to our Kraken stuff, which I think is partially related to what Sylvia was mentioning with other teams, right? But it's difficult when I see some of the doomerism because I don't care, man. Like with some of these franchises where I've been beaten to death, and hope is a word I should never speak out loud, like the Mariners, get that. I get that frustration. But, this one, I'm like, hey, man, like, I'm looking at Berkeley Catton, like, hey, that's your future. I'm looking at Shane Wright, had a great pass, was, great zone entry, great pass to Jared McCann. I'm happy with that and that he's been able to pick things up a good amount since he got healthy scratch. So I don't know, just the whether it's instant gratification, the need to win now, all that from the fan base or pressure from ownership. It's frustrating, and I really wish we could have um, seen this thing grow properly because it feels like we stunted things a little bit, and like poor Jade was trying to rush cooking some mac and it's like we cooked things way too quickly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's my frustration. I'll probably mention some of it when we. Oh, that's next.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey. Where are you going to watch all those Kraken away games?
Kraken away games, making a push. I was thinking of coming here just because Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle sports, only if that's okay with you.
I mean, I love that idea. Hope to see you here.